Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there lived a girl named Little Red Riding Hood. She was called that because she loved to wear a hooded cape of red velvet that her grandmother had made for her. One day, her mother said, "Little Red Riding Hood, your poor grandma is ill, and you must take her this homemade pie." So Little Red Riding Hood pulled on her cape, placed the pie in her basket, and sang merrily as she slipped out the door. "Remember to stay on the path and go straight there," called her mother as she left. Little Red sighed, rolling her eyes. "My mother is always giving me rules," she told the trees and the animals as she skipped down the path to Grandma's. "Don't talk to strangers. Don't wander into the woods. Don't stick your finger in an ant's nest." Just at that moment, Little Red Riding Hood saw a patch of wild flowers that had sprung up in the woodland. She left the path and ran into the woods to gather up a handful of the beautiful blooms. Little did Little Red know that a hungry wolf was hiding behind a nearby tree, licking his lips as he imagined what a tasty snack the little girl would make. But he didn't dare make a meal of her while he could hear the sound of woodcutters close by. "How Granny will love these fragrant flowers," she blabbed away merrily as she picked. "By golly, that girl is a chatterbox," thought the wolf as he hastily hatched his plan. "But I bet she's full of flavor." With that, he dashed off through the woods to Grandma's house. When the wolf arrived at Grandma's house, he rapped on the door and said, "Grandma, Grandma, let me in." But when Grandma replied, "Not by the hair on my chinny chin chin," the wolf snapped his fingers in disappointment. That trick had not worked on those 3 pesky pigs either. He needed a new plan. This time he tapped lightly on the door, and in his best little girl's voice, "Granny, it is I, Red Riding Hood. I've brought you some fine flowers to brighten up your room." "Oh, dear child," replied Grandma. "Come right in. The door is unlocked." The wolf opened the door, leapt inside, and gobbled up Grandma in one mouthful. Then he put on a set of her night clothes and a nightcap, drew the curtains so that the room was quite dark, and lay down in her bed. Little Red Riding Hood gathered a lovely posy of flowers and continued on her way to Grandma's house. When she arrived, she knocked on the door. A husky voice called out, "Who is there?" "Little Red Riding Hood, with some tasty pie to make you feel better," she replied. "Come in," called the wolf. "I am too weak to come to the door." So Little Red Riding Hood opened the door and went inside. It was quite dark inside the house, but Little Red Riding Hood could see Grandma under the bed covers, her nightcap pulled low over her face. "Put the pie down and come say hello to your grandma," said the wolf. Little Red Riding Hood approached the bed. She was surprised at how Grandmother looked in her night clothes. "Oh, Grandmother, what big ears you have," she said. "All the better to hear you with." was the reply. "Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you have," she said. "All the better to see you with," was the reply. "Oh, grandmother, what big teeth you have," she said. "All the better to eat you with," replied the wolf as he bounded out of the bed and gulped down Little Red Riding Hood in one delicious mouthful. The wolf felt sleepy after his big feast and very comfortable in his new night dress. So he lay down again in the bed and fell asleep. He started to snore very loudly. Just then a woodcutter who lives nearby passed the house. "Goodness, old grandma is snoring even louder than usual," he thought. "I'd better see if she is all right." The woodcutter opened the door, peeked inside, and saw the wolf lying fast asleep in Grandma's bed, his belly full. He crept up beside the wolf, but stopped as he heard an unusual sound over the wolf snoring. He leaned his ear closer to the wolf's gurgling stomach and listened, and sure enough, he heard it clearly. It was the sound of a little girl chattering away. He was able to guess what the woolly wolf had done. The wolf cutter leaped onto the bed and tackled the sleeping wolf, who awoke with quite a fright. The wolf cutter seized the wolf around the belly. He squeezed and he squeezed until the wolf coughed and spluttered, and out popped Little Red Riding Hood. Then he squeezed and squeezed until the wolf choked and sputtered, and out popped Grandma. "Away with you," cried the wolf cutter to the wolf, "before I make a nice warm rug from your fur." And the terrified wolf fled into the wood, never to be seen again. Little Red Riding Hood was so relieved at being freed that she made a vow to Grandma that she would never again break her mother's rules. But on her way home that evening, Little Red Riding Hood found an ant's nest that was just too tempting to resist. Hi, please subscribe to my channel.